Kang Mi-ho owned the shadows of New York. The Korean American had built his organization on a foundation of discipline, fear, and zero tolerance for weakness. He dealt in high-end distribution and protected politicians, making him one of the most powerful and untouchable men on the East Coast. Miho's customized bulletproof penthouse on the Upper West Side was fortress-like, showcasing the staggering wealth and absolute solitude of his life. At 35, he commanded thousands, but his only companion was the deep, constant ache of a past he buried alive. His mother's memory was his only truth. His own hands, stained by the life he led, barred him from a future he couldn't name. He had mastered control, but his soul was a battlefield. He didn't know that in the heart of Queens, inside the tiny Korean market he'd forgotten he even owned, an 8-year-old girl named Mila Harris was about to aim a question like a loaded weapon, threatening to dismantle everything he was. Before we continue, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Enjoy the story. Hanul's K-Market was not a venture of sentiment. It was an asset Miho rarely visited, a small, unremarkable fixture in a neighborhood that didn't realize it was owned by a ghost. He arrived today, an unscheduled Tuesday in November, only to perform a cold assessment of its profitability, standing near the back shelves with the detachment of an auditor, observing the controlled chaos of the midday rush. That's when he noticed them. The cashier and the little girl. The mother, Mila Harris, moved with a quiet, exhausted dignity, her rich brown skin and natural hair pulled into a neat, worn knot. Her daughter, Mila, was sitting on a plastic stool behind the register, focused and still, coloring in a worn notebook. But it was the humiliation tightening the mother's jaw that caught his eye. The aggressive market manager had cornered Mila's mother over a missing $20, a clear attempt to harass her. The manager's voice was loud and humiliating. In 2 silent, chilling steps, Miho intervened, his sheer presence instantly silencing the argument. He spoke in low, dangerous Korean and fired the manager on the spot, his action cold, surgical, devoid of kindness. Just another piece of business. He turned to leave, dismissing the emotional fallout, but his hard gaze fell on the little girl. Mila wasn't playing anymore. She looked up, past the expensive black suit and the dangerous aura, and fixed her eyes on the intense, wounded look Miho always carried, the look that hid the scars on his chest. "Who hurt you?" The words cut through the silence. Miho was frozen. He didn't answer. He simply left the building, the innocence of the question haunting him more than any threat. He should have had the girl silenced. But the question had already done its damage. The fortress around Kang Mi-ho had a single, almost invisible breach, and it was located in the produce section of a mediocre K-market in Queens. He found himself returning, fabricating excuses about supply chains and auditing books, knowing the truth lay in the unsettling echo of the little girl's question. He did not seek conversation. He sought to observe. He would sit in his black sedan across the street or stand near the back refrigerators, watching Mila and her mother, Mila Harris. He studied the mother's weariness, the way she counted change with quiet precision, the brief, loving smile she gave her daughter that cost nothing but seemed to refill her entirely. Their life was simple, honest, and painfully exposed. A world away from the gilded, bulletproof cage of his penthouse. Miho's intelligence network, usually deployed for rival organizations and political leverage, was quietly rerouted. He soon knew everything about Mila Harris, her long shifts, the constant struggle to cover rent, the predatory loan terms on her building, and the imminent threat of eviction if she missed the next payment. The danger wasn't a rival boss or a crooked cop. It was the slow, crushing grind of poverty that was about to extinguish the small, genuine light Mila had shown him. This realization shifted his detachment into a chilling impulse to protect. He used a series of ghost corporations and layers of offshore accounts, moving funds with the same cold, surgical efficiency he employed when dismantling a rival operation. No one was credited. No one was thanked. The building's debt vanished. The threat of eviction became a clerical error that corrected itself overnight. Mila Harris and her daughter simply woke up to a suddenly stable existence, unaware that a powerful, invisible hand had swept the threat from their door. Miho executed the rescue perfectly, never speaking, never making eye contact. He was the unseen protector, shielding them with the very power he believed contaminated everything he touched. But as he drove away that evening, the phantom ache from Mila's question, "Who hurt you?" remained, forcing him back to their simple orbit, seeking a silent answer he couldn't name. Miho's visits to Hanul's K Market became a routine he couldn't justify to his lieutenants or to himself. He was the ghost, the protector who kept a distance, until the rain started. One dreary afternoon, he was leaning against a stack of boxed goods when a small scuffle broke out near the door. Two older boys aggressively snatched a brightly colored notebook from Mila, causing her to cry out. Before her mother could move, Miho reacted with fluid, terrifying efficiency. He didn't hit anyone. He simply used a chillingly precise wrist lock to retrieve the notebook, the sheer cold violence of his movements freezing the two older boys where they stood. They ran, terrified, leaving Mila staring at the man who had just used a dangerous skill for her small defense. Mila Harris approached him, not with fear, but with a deep, consuming weariness in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Kang," she murmured, her voice stripped bare of the professional cheer she usually wore. "You shouldn't have to get involved in our problems." Miho merely grunted, expecting the interaction to end, but she held his gaze. "This city is hard," she continued, looking at Mila, who now clung to her side. "Everything is a fight. Sometimes I worry I can't teach her how to fight back, how to stay safe." The honesty was an unexpected punch to the gut. She saw the perpetual struggle, the raw threat of the street, and spoke of it without complaint. Miho, still unable to speak of himself, looked at Mila. "She needs strong claws." He spoke, the words stiff, his voice rarely used for anything other than command. "I can show her how to keep herself safe." He crouched, his expensive suit straining, and demonstrated a basic balance stance, a fragment of his Hapkido training. "We call this tiger training." It was a lie, an invention, but he needed a name for the fierce foreign instinct that had bloomed in his chest, the instinct to guard this child. Mila watched him, fascinated, her tears forgotten. Over the next few weeks, the lessons continued. Simple blocks, proper falling, and how to look a threat in the eye. Miho rationalized it as securing an asset, but the quiet, unfamiliar pride he felt when Mila executed a perfect stance told him he was finally guarding something of true value. The man who hurt others was becoming a protector. The tiger training evolved into more than just self-defense. It became Miho's excuse for normalcy. He arranged an outing, a rare afternoon free from the city's concrete violence, taking Mila and her mother to a quiet art museum, then for ice cream in a sunlit park. He saw the easy, simple joy that radiated from them, a warmth he hadn't felt since childhood, and for a few hours he let down his guard. He was simply Mr. Kang, the man who knew how to hold a hand and protect a small girl's favorite dessert. It was on the walk back, just 2 blocks from the subway, that reality shattered the illusion. 3 low-level street thugs, unconnected to his empire but fueled by simple aggression, blocked their path. They saw an expensive man with 2 black females and decided they were easy targets. The verbal harassment quickly turned physical. Miho moved before the first insult finished. The shift was terrifying. The quiet, observant businessman vanished, replaced by a cold, efficient instrument of destruction. There was a sound of sickening impact, a snap, and a low, guttural roar that wasn't entirely human. In less than 10 seconds, the thugs were disabled, broken, and weeping on the pavement, the air tasting metallic. Mila Harris stood frozen, shielding Mila. But her eyes were fixed on Miho. In the struggle, his jacket had ripped, revealing the dense, faded, silvery scar tissue across his shoulder and down, his left arm. The indelible maps of a brutal past. This wasn't the man who taught Taekwondo stances. This was the warlord who had survived them. The revelation hung heavy in the silence. Miho looked at the damage he'd caused, the physical harm to the thugs, the terror in Mila's wide eyes, and the dawning comprehension in her mother's. He felt the familiar, crushing self-hatred return. He grabbed his ruined jacket and looked at Mila Harris, his face a mask of iron certainty. "I told you I am dangerous." His voice was raw. "You can't be near me. I protect. But everything I touch breaks. This is who I am. Leave, now, before I contaminate you further." He turned to walk away, fully embracing the monster he believed himself to be, convinced he had to save them by abandonment. Miho was already 50 yards away, disappearing into the pedestrian crowd, believing his savage act was the ultimate sacrifice to ensure their safety. He expected fear, tears, or perhaps a frantic scramble for a taxi. What he heard instead was a single fierce shout, "Kang Mi-ho, stop running!" He froze. It was the first time she had used his full name, and it carried a sharp, unyielding authority. When he turned, Mila Harris was walking toward him, leaving her daughter standing safely by a lamppost. There was no terror in her gait, only a furious, determined commitment. She stopped inches from him, staring at the scarred landscape of his exposed arm, then up at his tormented face. "Those men," she stated, her voice trembling slightly but rock solid. "They looked like the devil to me. But I looked into their eyes and I saw nothing but fear. Then I saw your eyes, Miho. They were cold, yes, but they weren't afraid. You were in control. You saved us." She reached out, her fingers hovering near the thick, ropey scar tissue on his shoulder. "Tell me about them. Tell me who gave you these." He tried to shake his head, turning away again. "It doesn't matter. I'm a monster, Mila Harris. I brought violence to your life." Her voice hardened. "I'm not afraid of the violence you use to protect me. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of the world without the strength you showed me today. You don't get to save us and then run away from yourself, Miho. I choose this risk. I choose you." She stepped closer, invading his space, forcing him to feel the heat of her presence. That's life. That's love. And it's worth the risk. The weight of her acceptance, her refusal to be scared away, was heavier than any physical blow he had ever taken. It was the anchor he never knew he needed. With a low, ragged sound, Miho reached out, his hand wrapping around hers. The decision was made, brutally simple. He would stay. He committed to being the protector she believed him to be, regardless of the blood and scars it cost him. Miho's commitment had drawn a target on their backs. His rival, Kim, a snake who had long resented Miho's growing power, saw the shift in Miho's attention, the frequent, unprotected trips to Queens, and smelled weakness. Kim's operation was precise and cruel. They didn't come for Miho. They went for the softness Miho was protecting. The target was Mila's elementary school. The information reached Miho's command center moments after the attempt. Kim's men had tried to snatch Mila during recess, only to be stopped by the sheer, overwhelming presence of Miho's hastily deployed, plainclothes security detail. Miho arrived at the scene of the thwarted kidnapping an hour later. The police were gone. Only his men remained. He found Mila and her mother waiting in a quiet classroom, both of them pale, both shaking uncontrollably. Mila Harris rushed into his arms, clinging to his strength, but Miho felt only a searing wave of self-disgust. This was the contamination he had feared. His world, brutal and uncompromising, had reached out and tried to consume the only innocence he had found. Later that night, in the sterile silence of his penthouse, Miho looked at his reflection, the cold eyes, the heavy gold watch, the sheer impossibility of his two lives coexisting. He had given them his danger, not protection. The guilt was suffocating. He realized he had two choices: run forever, disappearing into the abyss of his empire and guaranteeing their safety by absence, or destroy the threat entirely, eliminating the possibility of compromise. Running meant losing his soul, proving Mila's mother wrong, and confirming that he was, indeed, too damaged to love. Eliminating the threat meant fully embracing the monster, but using that monster only for their defense. The decision was agonizingly clear. He called his lieutenant, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "Locate Kim. Every asset, every shell, every man. Tomorrow, he disappears. Make it absolute." Miho chose the blood-soaked path to peace, realizing that his chance at redemption lay not in becoming a good man, but in using his terrible power to protect the good he had found. The decision to eliminate Kim was executed with cold, uncompromising precision. Miho used his entire arsenal, financial, political, and physical, to dismantle his rival's empire overnight, sending a message so brutal and absolute that every crime syndicate in New York understood. Mila Harris and her mother were untouchable, protected by a ferocity reserved only for Miho's deepest commitments. The danger was gone, but the debt remained. Not to Kim, but to the two people who had risked everything on him. Miho returned to their small apartment, not as a boss, but as a man stripped bare by his own actions. He found Mila playing quietly on the floor, still bearing the shadow of fear in her eyes. He knelt before her, finally answering the question that had shattered his guard months ago. He spoke simply, editing the bloodshed but retaining the raw truth. "I was hurt a long time ago, Mila. Very badly, and because of that, I learned how to be strong. But I didn't know how to stop hurting others, even myself, until you." Mila looked at his face, then reached out a small brown hand and touched his cheek. "It's okay, Mr. Tiger," she whispered, her forgiveness immediate and unconditional, affirming his choice to fight for them. Then Miho rose and faced Mila Harris. "I told you I was dangerous," he said, his voice heavy with confession. "I had to be. But you gave me a reason to point that danger outward, to protect something good." He waited for her to recoil, but she stepped forward, her acceptance profound. "I know who you are, Miho," she said, her hands cupping his face. "And I know who you chose to be. Thank you for staying." Her acknowledgement of his effort, his dark transformation, felt like absolution. It was in that moment, rooted in total honesty and shared fear, that they finally kissed, a true connection that promised both risk and redemption. It was the first time Miho had ever tasted peace. The liquidation of Kim's empire was only the first step. The deeper, more intricate work was the restructuring of his own. For months, Miho devoted himself to transforming his organization, peeling away the layers of crime like dead skin, transitioning money and assets into fully legitimate real estate and international trade. He was ruthless in his cleanup, forcing his lieutenants to adapt or disappear, driven not by profit, but by the fierce necessity of protecting his new home. He was giving up an empire for a family, and he treated the endeavor with the same cold, brilliant precision he'd used to build the original. He moved Mila and her mother from their cramped apartment in Queens to a beautiful, sun-drenched brownstone in a quiet, safe neighborhood, ensuring their security was layered and invisible. He was no longer just the ghost protector. He was a tangible presence. He attended Mila's school events, helped with homework, and was a steadfast, loving partner to Mila Harris, whose own resilience was now bolstered by his commitment. He loved the routine of it, the late-night talks, the simple comfort of sitting on the sofa, the feeling of shared, peaceful space. One afternoon, the scent of garlic and ginger filled their new kitchen. Miho, having traded his bespoke suits for a simple white undershirt, was teaching Mila how to properly dice vegetables for kimchi jjigae, a recipe from his mother. Mila Harris leaned against the counter, watching them, her face glowing with a happiness that was effortless and pure. Miho looked up, caught her gaze, and felt a profound sense of rightness, a feeling the bulletproof penthouse had never offered. Mila finished her task and looked up at him, her eyes shining with pride. "Papa Miho," she said, using the nickname she'd invented recently, one that still melted the ice around his heart. "My soup is going to be the strongest." She paused, her small hand reaching out to touch the faint, silvery scar near his collarbone. "You're the strongest, too, the protector." Miho pulled her close, resting his scarred cheek against her smooth, warm hair. His empire was smaller now, his reputation quieter, but his heart, finally at peace, was fuller than it had ever been. He was home. He had found the love and forgiveness he never thought he deserved. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from. And if you felt it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt this story was really worth listening to, click the Super Thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue creating stories that touch the soul.